Hi, in this section of workflow, we're going to introduce you to Bridge and using Bridge to organize our images, give them star ratings, give them new names if you choose to, and just a way to organize your images in a way that makes it easier to find and to edit. We're still at the input stage of our workflow. Remember, it was input, edit, output, and archive. This is still considered the input stage where you're actually going to bring your files into some folder structure, give them a rating, because some are going to be better than others. And then from that point on, once we organize things, we'll go ahead and jump to the edit section of the workflow. Okay, so let me introduce you to Bridge. Hi Bridge, this is the class. Hi class, this is Bridge. The idea here is that we're going to go ahead and find our images that we've already copied onto the hard drive. Again, you're going to be using raw files, camera raw files, and those are the ones we want to work with. Those are the ones we want to edit. Okay, so first off, I need to go and find where those images are. So I'm going to look at the left-hand column here, and I think I have this in my that one cheat sheet that I put up there. You can go to favorites, you can go to folders, wherever you feel comfortable looking for your images. I'm going to go to folders, and I'm going to go to my desktop because I know I save those images on my desktop. I'm going to look for the appropriate folder, and this one I'm going to call, I've called Daytona. So I've got my, when I double click that, I've got my images here, and you've got various options. The workspace that we want to work in, or at least until you get comfortable with using Bridge, is the Essentials workspace. And you can see that right at the top here. So you have Essentials, Film Strip, Metadata, and so on. Feel free to experiment with any of these to see what they do and what they look like. Maybe you have a preference over one as opposed to the other. That's up to you. Okay, I want to get you started so that way at least you have something to work from. Okay, first off, so we have the workspace. That's all set. Good to go. Just to point out a few little things, some terminology. At the very top here is our menu bar. We have File, Edit, View, and so on. Over on the left-hand column, we have our Folders and Favorites panel. We have our Filters and Collections panels. Okay, and we'll talk about those here in a minute. We have our Content window right here, and it shows us thumbnails of all our images. We have our Preview window, and then we have our handy-dandy metadata and file properties. Okay, the cool thing about this is it shows us what our aperture was, what our shutter speed was, any exposure compensations, which we'll talk about in the future, what our ISO setting was. Okay, it also tells us what our image dimensions are and our image size in megabytes. On the preview, in the content window here, we can actually go to the bottom and scroll this little slider and make the thumbnails a little bit bigger. Okay, I mean, you don't want to make them too giant because you want to see more than one at a time, at least I do. In the preview window here, you can actually see a preview of that image. If I change this, switch images, I see different previews. If you want to make the preview window a little bit bigger, you can. Any of these panels with the little divider bar, for lack of a better term, can be click and drag bigger or smaller. If you want to make that wider or more narrow, it's up to you, whatever you like. Okay, a lot of this is personal preference. So I'm going to leave it like this for now. I don't really need to see the big preview yet. We'll get to that in a minute. First thing I want to do though, as I specified in our outline, was to rename these images. Okay, so right now, when they come off your camera, they'll have a naming convention based on whatever your camera is. IMG, 1077.cr2. CR2 just happens to be the file format for my Canon camera. You may have NEF for Nikon or one of the other formats for Sony and so on. Okay, you're going to keep that, not a problem, but maybe we want to give it a little bit more descriptive name because IMG does not tell me anything. It just tells me it's an image, but it doesn't really tell me where it was shot, when it was shot, or any of that good stuff. So what I want to do is I want to rename all these images in this folder. And so what I'm going to do is going to go Edit, Select All, Command A on the Mac, Control A on the PC, and all my images are selected. You can see down in the lower left-hand corner here it says 22 images are selected. Over here it says 22 images are selected. So you know, you got it, 22 images are selected. Now I want to go under the Tools menu and click Batch Rename. Okay, now we have this rename dialog box and we have some options here. If I've copied them over, I really don't need to remember what the original file name was. You just need to give it a unique name for this purpose, you know, for editing and archiving and for future reference. Okay, so here I'm going to say rename in the same folder. I don't need to move it to a different folder. You can either do a string substitution. So you have these various options here. You know, you can put text on here, and so notice at the bottom it says current file name and then new file name. Well, I haven't given it a new file name, so it's really not going to do anything. It's just going to give me a file name with the same, just an extension. So here, if I just said Daytona, great. Okay. Unfortunately, I have 22 images that would be all named Daytona. So I need to give them a unique identifier. So I'm going to click this little plus sign here. And I can go in and say, okay, let me give it a sequence number. Okay. Now I can do 1 digit, 2 digits, 3 digits, and so on. You know, if you have 1,000 images that you're renaming, 3 digits won't be enough because you'll run out of digits. You'll need more, maybe 4 digits or 5 digits. You know, I'll leave that up to you guys. Okay. I usually like to see a little separation between my file name and the number. So I'm just going to hit the Shift underscore key and give it a little underscore. And notice now it's Daytona underscore 001. That's the starting number. If I wanted to start it at 9, I can start it at 9. So I'm going to leave it 1. And that's it. That's all you really need to do. Okay, if you want, if for some reason you feel like you need to refer back to that original file, you can say preserve current file name in XMP data. So my original file name was, you know, 1077, I'm sorry, 1077, and it'll keep that in the original file name, okay, in the XMP data. We're going to talk about XMP data here, or metadata, in a second. So it's very important. The XMP is that you remember that you need it and you'll have it. Preserving current file name, it's helpful, but it's not required. So we've got our destination folder in the same place, our new file name, we verify it down here, and then all we have to do is click rename, and it'll rename all of those images based on your parameters set here. So I'm going to click rename. Voila, how easy was that? So 22 images. If you had 1,000 images, it might take a little longer, but basically you notice here 01, 02, 03, and so on. Perfect. So from future reference, you're going to always want to refer to a specific number of a file. Meaning, if you have 2 images that look similar, you might not be sure of which one you've edited in the future. So what you need to do is always try to retain that number 007 or 008 as part of the file name when you're editing. Again, we'll get to that when we get into the editing component, but for now, let's just keep it simple and keep the numbers sequential like this. Okay, so we've set our workspace. We've renamed all our images. Now what we want to do is go through and review our images. Again, not all the images are going to be ideal. You know, some may be overexposed, underexposed, out of focus. Maybe you pushed the shutter button down by accident and you took a picture of your feet. Who knows? It all happens to everybody at some point. But we want to go ahead and review our images, and we have a simple way to do that. We want to review our images so that way we can actually pick the ones we want to work on, and then even maybe go even farther down the list and pick even fewer to work on. You're not going to work on all of them because it just takes too much time, especially if you're not going to use it. Why work on it? So again, you're going to pick images that are underexposed, out of focus, the cropping is off or whatever. So what we want to do is we want to get into review mode so that we can actually give them a number rating or a star rating, and then we'll go ahead and create our little collection of select images that we're going to be editing down the line. Under the View menu, notice it says Review Mode. Command B on the Mac, Control B on the PC. And just to point out, any of these little options here, that little flowery looking thing on the Mac, that's the Command key. You'll have an equivalent for the PC, which is the Control key. And so the software works in parallel. It works exactly the same on Mac and PC. The shortcuts or the keystrokes are a little bit different. Okay, and so for the Mac, Command L would bring us a slideshow. Command B brings us review mode. If you wanted to go show thumbnails only, Command T. So it's always handy to, as you go along, to learn these shortcuts because it gets you into something faster. If I wasn't in the view mode, I knew I need to review, and I hit Command B on the keyboard, quickly I can jump in there. So under View, Review Mode,